Everybody's time. I'd like to be respectful of your time and get started. Thank you all for attending tonight. My name is Kaitlyn W. I am the planning supervisor with the City of Colorado Springs Planning Department, and I am the case planner for this application. We're here tonight for the Ovation neighborhood meeting. I'd like to take a minute just to go over tonight's agenda and describe the roles of the folks who are going to be presenting tonight. This is a bit of a unique application because the property in question is a city-owned piece of property. As such, the City Parks Department is the applicant on this application. They are submitting a rezone request and a concurrent land use plan. Those applications are always reviewed by the City Planning Department. And so I just want to be sure that while we're both city agencies, we're doing distinctly different things as it relates to this application. So the City Parks Department, as the property owner, is the applicant and the entity who is requesting a rezone of this property. And the City Planning Department, and my role in reviewing this application, is to review the request based on the criteria in our city zoning code. So we are sort of distinctly different entities in this application. Before I turn it over to the applicant team to give their presentation tonight about the requested rezone, I just wanted to lay some ground rules for tonight's meeting. We have an agenda that will include a presentation followed by a question and answer period that will be facilitated by our applicant, where anybody who's in attendance tonight can ask questions to the Parks Department, the City Planning Department, if you have questions about process, and the development team who will be giving a presentation tonight as well. I just ask that, this is an arena of mutual respect. We're here to listen to all of you, the concerns that you have and questions that you might have for the folks who are going to be here tonight, and we ask the same in return. I know that there are a lot of emotion involved in change and things that happen in our communities, and I would just ask that we treat each other with respect as we engage in dialogue and discourse tonight. I would also just ask that for the question and answer period, that we try to limit comments and focus really on asking questions of the applicant team and development team, so that we can curate we can get some responses to you all about any questions that you have about the scope of work and what's going on here. City Planning Department will be in the back taking notes. If there are questions about the city planning process, I'll be here to answer those questions during the Q&A period as well. I did leave my business cards up at the sign-in sheet. If you did not sign in, please do so, because if you haven't submitted comments in writing to me, I don't have your email and I don't have a way to get in touch with you. But if you put your emails on that sign-in sheet, I add them to my list so that I have a really comprehensive list of everybody who's interested in the application and following along through the process. So I strongly encourage, if you don't want to sign in because you don't want other people to see it, send me an email. My business cards are up there, and I really encourage all conversation and questions that can be directed to me. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the applicant team and welcome Rick.
All right, I'm succeeding because I just crossed all of those wires without tripping, so I'm doing pretty well. So let me see if I can advance this a little bit. So for tonight's meeting, we're going to do a project review status, which you just heard, and then the property's history is the thing that I'm going to talk about, to kind of give everybody the information. I know in some cases you don't always have the information in the background and history, and you need to know that in order to participate and give your comments, so we appreciate that. And then you'll also hear the proposal for the property's end use from Plata Communities. My name is Britt Haley. I am the director of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Department, and so I am happy to be here tonight to talk to all of you. And glad to see the turnout. Thank you for spending time, on your evening with us. So everybody is pretty familiar with this site, I'm guessing. Is there anybody in the room who doesn't know where this site is? Raise your hand, but you can see North Powers Boulevard and Interquest Parkway, and then this property that we are talking about tonight. And really, it's got a long and kind of interesting history for the Parks Department. Back in 2003 is when the City Council of Colorado Springs actually approved that purchase of the Briargate Sports Complex property. And you can see the value there at the time was $2,657,160. Now that was signed by Mary Lou Makepeace. Raise your hands if you were here when Mary Lou was our mayor. Yeah, so a fairly good representation, but then also a lot of people that have moved in since, right? And so back in that time, we were definitely thinking that we wanted in the Parks Department, based on requests we had from the community and needing more sports fields, more athletic opportunities, more youth sports programming, that we needed a northern location for a sports complex. Any of you who have kids who take part in sports know that all of the sports complexes that we have right now are very much in the south part of the city. We've got the Gossage Sports Complex at about Fillmore and I-25 off of Mark Dadwin. We've got the Leon Young Sports Complex even further south. Over by the airport off of Powers and Milton Proby, we have the Skyview Sports Complex. So we really needed something up north, and that's what drove our staff at the time, back in 2003, to seek out this site for that purpose. And so in April, so we buy it in March, and then April of 2003, City Council approved a resolution to name the property after a former mayor, Lawrence D. Oaks, but we know him as Larry Oaks. And the thing that had happened that was quite tragic is that Mayor Oaks was 79 years old, and in between purchasing this property and that naming, he passed away, and City Council wanted to honor him. So that's why you see it named the Larry Oaks Sports Complex property, kind of right in that time when we purchased it. So Larry Oaks was our mayor from 1975 to 1979. And so that is kind of the history of our purchase of the property, and then also the naming of it to that. So fast forward now to 2016. When the Parks Department had a partner in mind with a nonprofit group called the Scott Hall Field of Dreams group, and we went to a public process much similar to this and gave out a presentation about how we wanted to move that forward into the sports complex that we had hoped to build. And unfortunately, and here's one of the images from that process. There were quite a few images because we made a lot of adjustments, but in the end, the community just did not support having a sports complex right in that location. And we heard those comments, and the main thing that we were told to do is, Parks Department, find another place for that sports complex. It just doesn't belong in this space. And so that's exactly what we tried to do. In 2017 to 2019, the City Parks Department did in fact work with another developer of the Victory Ridge area to see if we couldn't do a land swap. And you'll see an alternate location for the sports complex in that kind of bluish color, and of course this property in the yellowish color. And we both worked diligently forward on that, but unfortunately that land trade or swap was just unsuccessful because as all of the development came around Victory Ridge, the prices and values increased substantially. Well, good news for the Parks Department too, actually, because on our 60 acres over in the yellow, its value also increased substantially, but not at the same rate. And so the 36 acres that you see in the blue turned out to be far more valuable than the 60 acres we had in the yellow, and it couldn't be an even trade. And so that land swap just really was not successful, unfortunately. So now we fast forward to really late last year in 2022, and we had the opportunity for a three-way land exchange. And in city talk, a land exchange can actually be just a group of activities that are real estate transactions. And this one turned out to be an offer of having a purchase of some properties a sale of this property and a donation of property. So on November 8th of last year, the City Council authorized a real estate transaction for this land exchange. They had a work session ahead of that in October, and really the entire City Council put it on the consent agenda because they felt like this, from the bigger picture perspective, made all of the sense in the world. So what it had to do is that you'll see that there are these darker purple areas, and that was the proposal that High Valley Land would donate 352 plus acres of open space to our city's Trails, Open Space and Parks program, the TOPS program, which some of you may be kind of familiar with. And that was amazing because the TOPS program right now doesn't have any property in its inventory in our northeast part of the city. And this is beautiful, riparian, lush, wildlife-rich open space. So it was something that people in my department get very excited about because many of them, some of the park rangers, have dedicated their careers to managing, being good resource conservationists and stewards of that kind of property. So we thought 352 acres is a great donation to this program. In addition to that donation, High Valley Land agreed to sell property to the Colorado Springs Fire Department for a fire station site, and that's that little yellow triangle that you see up off of Interquest Parkway. And we all know that the fire department needed a location for a fire station that could serve this part of the community. So the Colorado Springs Fire Department was very interested in that site because that's a very good location to be able to get to the places they need to get to. And then the City Parks Department, as part of this, agreed to sell the Larry Oak Sports Complex property back at fair market value back to La Plata Communities, which it turns out was the group that we bought it from in the first place. So that is the total picture of what that real estate transaction was looking like back last year in October, November, and we were putting all of that together. So there are some requirements that went along with this land transaction. And I'm going to call it a land transaction because it's definitely a sale and a purchase and a donation. High Valley Land is in contract to donate that open space to the TOPS program. And that closing date is actually set for September 7th, so right around the corner. Colorado Springs Fire Department followed through on its requirements and purchased the site for the new fire station. So that's been checked off the box. And then City Parks, as part of the real estate transaction and part of its contractual requirements, was obligated to apply for rezoning of the Larry Oak Sports Complex property. So, following through on our contract, we are here not only as the applicant, but pursuing that rezoning as part of that contractual requirement. So I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a summary before kind of turning things over to the next group that's going to talk more about what the end use of the site might look like. And that is, we had goals in this land transaction that included purchasing that land for the Colorado Springs Fire Department, selling that 60-acre Larry Oak Sports Complex property to allow our Parks Department to then reinvest the money from that fair market value sale into some other property where we could build a sports complex and people would be more comfortable with it. And then also a goal was to receive over 352 acres of that donated open space. And I wanted to point out here, because you can see the outline of the 60 acres that we own next to the purple that is being donated, that donated open space is 3 times the size of the Larry Oak Sports Complex, and just next door to that property. And that was identified in the Park System Master Plan as candidate open space. So independently evaluated well before we did all of this is an open space opportunity. And I can tell you from our ranger team going out there and checking it out, it does have some really neat aspects, beautiful views. Of course, riparian habitat with that year-round stream is very important to wildlife. And it is also habitat for the Preble's mother jumping mouse. And then the future property focus is going to be for the Pebbles Meadow Jumping Mouse because the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service requires that under the Habitat Conservation Plan associated with that. And we have the expertise to really follow through on that. But we also want to propose a future trail connection that would allow people to really enjoy and go through that property and really enjoy the wildlife aspects that we find so compelling there. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker, Cody Humphrey, because he's the person who's going to be able to speak to you more about the end use of the property and the zoning and planning process.
All right. Thank you, Brett, and thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. My name is Cody Humphrey. I'm the Director of Planning for Plata Communities. And, I just want to say thank you to the city for allowing us to actually come and be able to talk with you all, to give you a little bit more background on the project, what we're planning on doing, maybe a little more insight to just, the land use plan that has been submitted. As Britt alluded to, that land use plan, it's a black and white plan, it's pretty straightforward. That establishes the zoning for this project. The details, though, come with the development plan, and that's the next step if the land use plan is approved. So, my name, like I said, Cody Humphrey. I'm with La Plata Communities. We have been in the northern part of Colorado Springs for many years now. One of the major developers who've seen the growth of the northern part of Colorado Springs for the last 30, 40 years now. We are the master developers of the Bargate Master Plan. And so we're actually, this library is a part of the Bargate Master Plan. We have developed Cordera, Bargate Business Park, Pine Creek, Bargate Crossing, North Port. We've also developed the master plan with the farm, and as well as the campus at Foothills Farm. We also have a project out in Grand Junction called Redlands 360. Just a brief outline. This is pretty much represents every slide that I'll go through. But we'll talk about the site context maybe a little bit more than what Britt alluded to earlier. We're going to touch on the master plans, the Bargate master plans that have evolved a little bit through time over the last 30, 40 years. The land use plan, as I mentioned before, the proposed zoning, as well as a change to the proposed zoning, and so that will be something good to share with you all. Density comparison, density representation. We'll talk a little bit about what that means for the density that the zoning comes with. We're going to talk about the overhead lines, if anybody's familiar with the overhead electric lines that come through the property. The neighborhood park, public open space and trail amenities, traffic and fire review. We'll summarize it. You all will have an opportunity for questions. So site context. So this goes into a little bit more in-depth, just kind of highlights the different existing neighborhoods and communities that are currently around the property itself. So we've got Bison Ridge just to the south, Charter Greens and Pine Creek that are south of Old Ranch Road. We do have Creekside to the west there. On the other side of Powers, North Fork, which we did develop and finished 6 or 7 years ago. Actually, more like 4 or 5. Pine Creek High School. And so I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's just kind of highlighting, what exists currently out there and where this site sits amongst everything in its surroundings. So a little bit bigger view of the site. The site itself is 60.28 acres. Just to the west is the protected mouse habitat, as Britt was talking about earlier. and Chapel Ridge Drive that does stub into the property currently. The site itself is fairly flat. There is some topography there. There's some existing vegetation out there as well. And then, as I mentioned, there are overhead lines that do pass through the southern part of the site. So this touches on a little bit more of the history that Greg alluded to earlier with the master plan. So this master plan, it's clearly, well, actually, it's not very clear at all. It's from 1987, so close to 35 years ago. I had to blow this up down here so you could actually see it, because it's in very small letters down there by the scale. So, approved on July 28th, 1987. And where you see the red dashed line, that's kind of generally where the property currently sits. So we're going to zoom in here a little bit. So the property in 1987 was actually planned to be residential. It was planned for low and medium residential. So you can see the legend over there to the left. And then I'll blow that up even more. That was planned for residential low or residential medium, 3 to 5 DU per acre, 8 to 12 DU per acre. So I only show that as a piece of the history. A lot of us don't know this. I mean, very few know this, but in 1987, that land was actually slated to be residential development. And so after the purchase of the land by the city in 2003, the master plan had to be updated, because the intention at that time was to be a sports complex. And so as you can see up there, again, it's highlighted. And then on the next slide here, you can see it a little bit better. It was highlighted in the green as sports complex. Not necessarily a park. A sports complex is essentially something different from what a park is, if you're looking at purely the definition. So, and essentially, with what is being proposed here, we are going back to that 1987 master plan in terms of that low and medium density, that residential housing development for that land. So the land use plan, again, it's pretty straightforward, not a huge amount of detail. It does ask, it does show, how the road system gets laid out. It does show that there's a 3.5 acre park, and we'll dive into that a little bit more here in a second. It shows where all the different easements through there are actually located currently. It shows some phasing lines, that actually we are changing a little bit. So, but that's what's been submitted, and that was submitted on August 2nd of this month. We are actually in the process of resubmitting the land use plan. We will be doing so in about 2 weeks. And part of the reason we are actually going to resubmit today, but we are holding off. We've got a few things that we need to update. And one of those things is the zoning. The zoning, when we first came in, was with R-Flex medium. And that R-Flex medium had a range of density from 5 DUs up to 16 DU per acre. And so when you hear 16, I mean, that can put a shock in you, right? 16 DU times 60, you do the math, it comes out to 900 and some units. That can be a lot of homes, right? We're actually going to change that though. We're going to downzone it to an R-Flex low. And part of that is because of through a number of yield studies that we've done. Yield studies are basically concept plans that kind of give you a sense of how many units we would want to put in there. Was never going to be anywhere near 16 DU per acre. It was going to actually be on the lower end. So we decided that it didn't make sense to go with that R-Flex medium. It would make more sense to actually go with an R-Flex low. And the R-Flex low has a maximum density of 6 DU per acre. So what that means is that we aren't going to be putting multifamily housing in. We never intended to anyway. And so R-Flex low doesn't allow multifamily either. It only allows single-family attached homes. And the R-Flex medium was a 45-foot height limit. The R-Flex low is a 35-foot height limit. And so it fits much better into the context of the surrounding communities. Good segue into the density comparison. So this graphic here actually shows the different densities of the existing communities around there. And then it also shows the Ovation Center. And so as you can see, Bison Ridge is about 2 to 4 DUs per acre. Bison Ridge number 5 down there to the south, just north of Old Ranch Road, is actually, that is within the 6+ DU. Bison Ridge number 4 is about the same density as what we are proposing. North Fork is in the 2 to 4 DU per acre. The North Fork townhomes, which are just straight across Powers there, that's 6+ DU per acre. And so this graphic is really showing that, you know, the density that we're proposing with the new zoning, with our flex low zoning, fits much better contextually into the surrounding communities. If that was an R-Flex medium, I turned it purple, and it wouldn't look anything like any of the other colors that are actually on this graphic, right? So, so this helps everyone understand kind of how the surrounding densities and what we're proposing kind of fit together a little bit better. This is a density representation. So these two photos here, you know, they're illustrations, they're graphics. The top one actually represents an alley-loaded single-family detached home. It's on a small lot, a smaller lot, and you know the communities around us are 50 to 60 foot lots. The lots that you see there up on the top, they're somewhere in the range of 40, 30 foot wide lots. They're single-family detached. They're alley-loaded. There's going to be a garage in the back. These are front elevations that are on the street, so that's a streetscape scene that you would actually see as you drive through the community. At the bottom is a single-family attached product, and basically what that is it's a front-loaded, you could call it a duplex if you wanted to. The technical term is single-family attached, but they can be front-loaded or alley-loaded. And so this is the type of density that you're going to see within the community. The overhead line. So as part of this project, our intention is to bury a portion of the overhead line that runs through our site. So if anyone's familiar, I don't have much. The overhead lines that come through here, there's a number of them that keep on going. Powers is right here. This line right here, this pole, actually has lines that go over a couple of homes right here. Then there's a pole here and a pole here, and another one there. These two that you see in this picture here, these are the two that would actually get buried with the lines themselves. And so we are proposing a 60-foot wide multi-utility easement that will take this overhead line, an existing underground line, and the gas line, and put it all in one easement. And so that would disappear for the project. You know, this portion all the way over to, basically that's where the start of the mouse habitat is, and the extension of Chapel Ridge Drive going into our site. So that is our intention. You know, that benefits the community itself. It also benefits Bison Ridge to the south and anyone who's living to the north. The neighborhood park, so we are proposing a 3.5 acre neighborhood park here. As we have developed Briargate master plan, we have actually, we have a surplus of park dedication acreage of about 26 acres. And so we are not necessarily required to provide a neighborhood park, but we do know that it's something that can be of benefit to the other the other communities to the south to be able to use. And so that neighborhood park, which is neighborhood parks are a minimum of 3.5 acres. And so we are wanting to include one in this community, and it's public. It's going to be a public park. Anybody can come there, drive there, walk there, bike there. And we are actually putting it in this area here to preserve a bunch of the existing trees that are out on the site. And so that's our intention, is to kind of incorporate that existing vegetation into the park itself. And so that's shown on the land use plan. The open space and trail amenities, not all of this is shown on the land use plan, partly because it's not necessarily required. However, we do know that we are going to have an open space buffer around the entire border of the project itself, and that will have a trail, some sort of trail that will be used, and again, open to the public to be able to be used, at any point. That 60-foot wide easement that I talked about earlier, that's actually going to be an open space corridor. We can't build on it, so we're going to turn it into an amenity. We're going to have a trail that runs through there, and that can be seen here. And having that park next to that greenway corridor turns it into a nice, a nice trail connection to the park itself. And so, without giving you any more information, this is about as much as I can provide at this point, because we haven't taken the plan to the level of a development plan, which you would be able to see more of the detail. But we are committing to this. This is part of what we think is right for this community. With the traffic study, I'm sure many of you have read this and seen it. City Traffic has also read it. Their recommendations are as follows, or their conclusions, I should say. Traffic could not be here tonight. City Traffic could not be here tonight, but this is what they relayed to us in an email. Existing counts are acceptable, as they were done while schools were in session. Adjustments can be made to the signal at Chapel Ridge and Old Ranch to mitigate any increase in traffic. Chapel Ridge is a major collector roadway. It's classified as a major collector roadway, and is projected. The projected traffic volumes are less than the threshold volume of the 10,000 vehicles per day for a major collector. Old Ranch west of Chapel Ridge is slated for improvements with the PPRTA number 3 funding. Improvements include widening 4 additional lanes. The developer, us, the Plata communities, will be required to stripe Chapel Ridge Drive to 3 lanes, a 3-lane section with a center lane. And we will also be installing a four-way stop at the intersection of Rhinestone and Chapel Ridge Drive to allow for pedestrians to be able to cross back and forth and not necessarily feel unsafe. We also have had fire department, Colorado Springs Fire Department has reviewed the plan, and they have also determined that the plan is acceptable and it meets their requirements. So, summarize everything so far. So, zoning request will change from the RFlex medium to the RFlex low on the next submittal. And that will limit the maximum height to 35 feet, not allowable to RFlex low zoning allows for a maximum of 60 per acre, which fits within the surrounding context of adjacent densities. Existing overhead lines through the site will be buried. That's our intention. We want to see that happen, and that will be buried in the 60-foot multi-utility easement. 3.5 acre neighborhood park will be included. All the parkland dedication and variety master plan has been fulfilled and exceeded by nearly 30 acres. Open space and trail amenities within the community will be open to the public. Traffic counts were acceptable. Chapel Ridge Drive has capacity to handle additional traffic. And the fire reviewed the plan and it's determined that it meets their requirements. So with that, I will open it to questions unless anybody on our team has anything else. We will.
Acceptable to who?
We're gonna.
Acceptable to everybody that doesn't live in the neighborhood that has to deal with traffic? Who determines?
Hold on a second. Hold on.
I saw question and answers.
Yes, I understand that.
Now, it's 1987 it's historical context, and I'm living it. So please answer my question. Acceptable to who?
We're going to ask that if you want to have a question tonight, you're welcome to come down the center aisle. I'll hand you the microphone, ask the question, and we'll have clerks and development up front, and they'll be willing to answer those questions. Remind you, as Kate said at the beginning, and comments that we might have up over here.
So I might appear to ask the same question. Make sure.
Thank you very much. I am Jim Blair. I'm the president of the Northern Neighborhood Alliance. We're kind of an association. And I have a question. Thank you very much for coming today. I've got a couple of questions here for parks. In the history you mentioned 2022, could you tell everybody what role, if any, the neighborhood had in your decision making? The direct local level.
So let's make sure, is this still on here? So when a park property is under consideration for something like this, it goes through a process with the Parks, Recreation and Cultural Services Advisory Board, and they make recommendations to City Council. So the way that works is there are public meetings of the advisory board. They happen every month. And so we brought the donation property piece through the TOPS working committee because the TOPS program would accept those. They had 2 public meetings about that, heard the presentation, but it was only about the donation properties. And that board voted unanimously to recommend the donation properties. Then the next step was to take the donation properties plus the rest of the plan to the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Advisory Board. And for those of you that may not be really familiar with that board, that is a board that's appointed by City Council. It's 9 citizen members, and they make recommendations about things like this. And so they held their meetings about that as well, and recommended to City Council that process. Then City Council had a work session, and then also the regular session to consider that land exchange. What doesn't happen, and what I suspect that you're wondering about, Mr. Blair, is, is there a process for the posting of the site and the little postcards that go out to everybody in the, 1,000 feet of the property? And that doesn't happen until there is a planning department activity, such as a request for rezoning, like we're doing today. So yes, neighbors can come to all of those meetings, but the notification process about something is about to change comes with an actual application where we're proposing for a change.
I'm not going to take over because there's a lot of people that have questions on my. My point is, I hope everyone agrees, we want more neighborhood direct participation in decision making. The second thing is the appraisal. How much did the city get for the property? And in Plata, I'd like to have you guys address the infrastructure problems. The mayor has recently highlighted infrastructure being first. We have infrastructure in place before we develop. So if you could address infrastructure, impact on schools, impact on traffic, impact on roads, which you talked about. Any of the things you most think about, as far as infrastructure, please address that.
All right, so I'll tackle your second question, Mr. Blair. And, this process tonight is to get all of your comments, so we do really appreciate that you are here to provide those. So on the appraisal, the transaction has not closed, and so their fair market value appraisal happened. That is a process under the real estate contract, but as a step in that process, we are obligated as the Parks Department to make this application, and so therefore that has not concluded yet. So I hope that clarified it for you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And then I'll turn it over to Mr. Humphreys for the questions about infrastructure and how that assessment goes.
My name is Mike Bergenson. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Plata community. With respect to infrastructure, as you showed you the master plan back in 1987, the infrastructure that was built, including the collector streets, were designed, and this was considered residential at that time, right? So that's built into there. Chapel Hills, for example, is a collector street that adequately serves the traffic counts, and that's supported by the traffic. So with respect to schools, you mentioned schools, we've notified District 20, we're in no position to answer for District 20, but they're certainly aware of this project, and they did not come back with any concerns. So I can't answer for them, but that's what I would say about it.
Thank you.
Did I answer?
Yes.
Okay.
So quickly, with respect to the four-way stop. With respect to the four-way stop, has there been any traffic study with respect to what kind of traffic would be going through a four-way stop at that intersection?
There has been a traffic study done that has been submitted to the city. We do have our traffic consultant here. That traffic stop, that stop sign, was actually requested from us from city traffic. And so it was not necessarily required because of the amount of the number of trips through that intersection. Our consultant doing the math and everything that's involved with the number of trips through that intersection said that it did not warrant a stop sign. However, we are recognizing that based on the comments that we've seen from the folks that have written in about this project, one of them being that they wanted to save a way of being able to cross Chapel Ridge Drive safely. This stop sign actually provides that because there'll be a pedestrian crossing at that intersection.
Because there's no through traffic currently, like you're aware of it. There's not a lot of traffic because there's no ability to have traffic.
Correct.
And then with respect to all this mealy mouth stuff about like we intend to potentially do a thing that might be resubmitted in the future, what's the plan that's going to be resubmitted? You mentioned that this is the plan.
Correct.
There's another plan coming, so we're talking about something that's obsolete theoretically, correct?
No, it's not obsolete, actually. It's the same plan.
Well, what's different?
I can tell you exactly what's different. What you will see is everything that's on here currently is going to stay. The only thing that's going to change are these phase lines. So everything that's on here is going to remain the same. The phase lines are changing because there was a misunderstanding from between planning and us as to what the phases needed to be. But everything you see in this land use plan right now is going to stay the same. There really isn't that much, there's not a huge amount of detail on here, right? And so nothing else is going to change. The only other thing that's going to change is our zoning request. And that zoning request was, when we first started, our flex medium. And we are going in with our second submittal, or I guess first resubmittal, however you want to talk about it. We are changing our zoning request from the R-Flex medium down to the R-Flex low.
How many units?
Yeah, that's, what does that translate to in that
Sure.
property area?
Sure. So prior, the R-Flex medium, right, was 5 to 16 DU per acre. And so if you want to do simple math, 16 times 60 was 900 and some units, right? We never have ever intended to ever come anywhere near that. And that actually means multifamily type product. 4-story, you know, the things that you're seeing a lot are getting built around here quite a bit.
How many units?
Bro, it's simple.
Well, we don't know yet.
Do the new
We do not know.
estimate.
Okay,
Yes,
if you want to let me finish, I can talk about it. Okay.
You're still talking about numbers that don't exist. Talk about the ones that do exist. What's the numbers that you're projecting?
6 times 60 is 360 units.
Most likely will be
With lower overhead.
most likely will be lower than that.
Yes.
What's the plan we're looking at? It's likely we're committing that we won't commit to go above.
You're committing to what? Is there a contract where you can
It's government.
But are you resubmitting with that specific number? And there's only going to be one ingress and egress from that entire.
That's right.
One direction out of this entire neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay, so let me address it. Right.
Well, I'm done standing in the freaking line and hear me out bullshit.
Okay. Yeah, and we should be, right? We're just trying to show you what we're planning. So this is the give and take. As we stated, we could have resubmitted, our plan was to resubmit, but we made the decision to wait until we hear comments from the citizens and address them. Okay? With respect to the entering and the exit, right, of that, we're obviously constrained by powers, right, with that being a state highway. With that said, we understand, we meet the requirements, right? We meet the requirements. But we are investigating other options, okay? We can't stand out here tonight and commit to those because those approvals are outside of our ability to grant them. Right? We have to go elsewhere, for example, CETA, to get approved. But I can assure you we're looking at that as much as we can.
You're looking at other exits.
We're looking at other options, that is correct. But I can't commit to them, and we don't even want to show them because I don't know if that can be approved. Right? But we understand. But in terms of the requirements and what the fire department has told us, they are comfortable with the level of development that would occur here at that exit. Okay? Now, we can all disagree. All I can tell you is that's what has been, because we have to meet requirements, right? So what that number is, the fire department determines it, and they have determined it. Okay?
So I say you. Go, yeah, you're good.
My name is, Okay, cool. My name is Maya. I'm a poli-sci student at PPSC, and what's your name?
Cody.
I'd like to thank you because I'm really sad that you can sit up here and listen to all the shadow rhetoric about traffic and wildlife and schooling, because that's not what it's about. They know what it's about. It's about the fact that they don't care about wildlife. They don't care about that. We have about 7 golf courses running through our neighborhood. You know how bad that is for the environment? That's terrible. But you guys don't care about that. So all of a sudden, when you guys want to propose amazing affordable housing for people to live in, now it's about wildlife, traffic, and school. But no, it's not about that. It's because what you guys are doing, they think with, can you be quiet while I have my time? Thank you. They think with lower income families comes crime and all this crazy nonsense, which is the reality. They're just all like really secluded in this village. They don't want their utopia to be disturbed by. I have my time. I know exactly what you guys think about schooling. I know exactly what you think. You have my time. Be quiet. My question.
Let him have his time to talk. opportunity. He may disagree with my meeting. Just let him have his time.
I do live in the neighborhood. I do. Thank you. So I have a reason to. I have a very good reason to. Okay, let me ask my question if you would be quiet, because like also that gentleman up there with the pink polo got up here and said comments. I don't like this. I don't like that. You didn't have a problem because you agreed with him. Because you agreed with him. That's why I'm saying that. So please be quiet and let me ask.
Ask the question.
So my question to you guys is to why you guys all sit up here and make up false reasons as to why you guys don't want this low income affordable housing plan. We know the real reason. We know the real reason. You guys don't want your children coming to your schools because you think with people. No.
Ask the question.
My question is just this is BS.
Questions to the front. Questions to
I
the
think I got
front.
your point, right? You're asking, I can't answer for why all these people are here, right? I assume, we have to assume, and I encourage you to assume, that they have genuine concern. Our purpose, but we can't, I can't,
Yeah, I know.
you can't decide
Yeah.
that's genuine.
You have to
Our
come up with
purpose
big
here is
reasons.
to hear their concern, try to address them as best we can. If there are changes to the plan that we can make, we will, based on those concerns. But we can't just assume that they have different, reasons. Now,
Yeah, but at the
I'm
same
gonna be
time,
clear that,
people
right,
just
we're not
here.
proposing any affordable housing.
Sorry, I was wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just wanna-
I just don't know.
No, that's okay.
But
Any other questions?
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, obviously someone can come up here and say, we don't want these people because they're gonna come to our schools.
Tony Serafino, I live in the Vice President Cattle Creek neighborhood. So just a comment, which I think will help this lady's comment, and then a clarification, and I'll get to my question. But when North Fork did the same thing about fire and emergency evacuations, and the traffic at Thunder Creek in Old Branch, the director of traffic engineering went before city council and said, fire engine can get through the road, even on an evacuation, and that was the end of that. And as far as the traffic, he said it's not the worst intersection in Colorado Springs. And that was the stamp of approval. So I don't think that's the way to go with this. But the clarification was, thank you for saying how many units, and even if it's a ballpark, but the traffic, that road can handle under 10,000. What did the traffic study reveal based on a projection of 360, 400 homes? Like how many cars going up and down that street? Does anybody, you said there was someone from traffic area?
We have Jeff, our consultant from Kimberly Moore, who's our traffic engineer. However, one of the things that needs to happen with this second submittal is because we have changed the zoning, the prior traffic study estimated about 500 units. Okay, so 500 units doesn't exist anymore. It's around 360, so we actually need to update the traffic study. So if he gives you any type of information, it will be based on 500 units rather than the 360. Yeah.
Jeff Plank with Kimberly Horn. So yeah, the traffic study was performed. The projection on Chapel Ridge was about 6,100 vehicles. So
Per day?
Per day, with the capacity previously mentioned, 10,000. As Cody mentioned, that was 500 units. We're lowering it to a maximum density scenario of 360. So you'll be looking roughly around 4,500 vehicles per day would be my estimate without updating the traffic study right now.
I'm sorry, say that again.
4,500.
4,500, okay. So one slight difference, and it says it's a high-capacity road, but the difference between Chapel Ridge to the north and Chapel Hills to the south is these residences were built not with an entrance to a community. Like Chapel Hills has entrances you drive in, and then there's communities. These houses are built with driveways 20 feet off of Chapel Hills. So you have houses like next to a thoroughfare. So that's, I don't know if it's La Plata's fault, but I think it's just planning's fault. And to that gentleman's point, This is all cart before the horse. The district, which we discussed, does not have, you don't have guidance from the district. They don't approve anything, but they took buses away from all these neighborhoods because we're too close to the schools. I saw during COVID people walking across the street, construction traffic speeding down the street. It's just a bad mix. So another 4,000 cars, even though there's a stop sign, there are 2 other streets, Kettle Creek being one, that don't have stop signs where people kids cross during the morning. So that alone, I don't think is a good mix. And I think that's poor planning that you're driving 4,000 cars down a road where kids are crossing the street and houses are right next to the road. So I don't know if you have a comment for that. And then I'll do my last question and I'll get out.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
just got one point of clarification on that. The 4,500 would be total, and so that would be the existing volume that's already within the community itself. So project traffic would be mixed in with that. But we would not be adding 4,500, it'd be a total of 4,500.
Okay. So then here's my actual question. Thank you for the time. When I believe the Bison Point neighborhood, I'm sure people are here from there. I think it's filing 5 or 6, I don't remember exactly, but where the horse ranch was. The developer there was classic. The amount of dump trucks and construction vehicles and contractor trucks, first of all, not obeying the speed limit. But the dump trucks came down Chapel Hills from 6 in the morning till midnight. I know from the city that those are way around the hours that are allowed. So when city planning comes and says, what is the impact to the community, and like the rehab facility and the impact to North Fork, there's put down there's no impact, but there is an impact. So what is, I talked about the traffic one, but what is La Plata going to do? And I'm asking city planning as well, because once it gets to city council and beyond, it's just a shell game. And it's not this department, it's that department. But what is your responsibility on getting construction traffic through responsibly and not till midnight? Because I think it was supposed to be cut off at 8. And this is like hundreds and hundreds of dump trucks. Classic never return my calls to say it's like it's not my department. And then they said, we'll go contact the excavation companies. But just this is a major impact, driving all that through Chapel Hills. What is the plan there?
I understand.
And the accountability.
Right, so I understand. So I think our times are 7 to 7, correct? 7 to 7. So we can put that out there if we don't have an enforcement thing. But with our builders, we've had long-standing relationships with the builders since 1995. We set up a fine program with them. So we need help from residents, right? So when you see somebody, because sometimes we can't necessarily point to what building it is, right? Because they're a subcontractor. But we need help from you guys to help us identify it. And we'll find those subcontractors that are doing it and other enforcement methods. So our builders don't particularly care for that finding thing, but we put that in a number of years ago to help do that. I couldn't stand up there and tell you there's not going to be construction, obviously, right? Going way in. But yes, we have, listen, we built prior, we care about, we built Cordero, we care about this area, right? So we care about our residents, we really do. So we want to work with you guys to figure, to address those concerns that they want. Is it going to be perfect? No, they're not. And you're going to get, I'll guarantee you, somebody will violate it. And when we find out about it, then we find it. And we get that corrected as best we can. Okay?
So I'm going to make an announcement here because I know that we have a hard stop at 7 o'clock, and I want to make sure that everybody who's patiently waited in this line to ask their questions gets that chance. So please ask a question, and we'll give you a chance for commentary on the comment cards and the different ways that you can interact with us. But I want to make sure that everybody in line is respected. And then to our project team, and I'm going to live by this as well, let's focus it on answering the question and not getting into a lot of conversation back and forth, just to be respectful of everyone. Everyone good with that? Okay, thank you.
Hi there, I'm Alan Andrews, and I have 2 quick questions. One is related to what's been said before. We talked about traffic studies and numbers going through the intersection. I wonder, has there been any study of accident frequency? Would any of us that live there know there's an accident at Powers and Old Ranch 2 or 3 times a week? And on the 21st, last Monday, any of us live in Kettle Creek or Bison Ranch were locked out of the neighborhood, you recall, because of a single accident that locked us all out of our home. We were not allowed to go home because there's no ingress, egress, whatever. The only reason I'm up here, whether this does any good or not, is because I believe you're acting in good faith, and I want it on the record that we need to be able to get home to our kids. And despite all the attacks on people's character here, we really do care about safety. And it was an unsafe situation already last Monday if you tried to go home between 11:30 and 1. So that's a question. Is there a study regarding the frequency of accidents and the fact that that Rhinestone and Chapel Ridge are, I don't know how many feet apart, but if there's a single accident, both of those get closed off. Colorado Springs PD told me that when I called on the 21st. There was nothing, they wouldn't answer questions, they just sent us away. They didn't care if kids were at home, didn't care if anyone needed help, they would not let anybody in. Second question is the cell service. Cell coverage in this area is horrible. We all struggle with it. Is there a plan to put up a tower?
First question, as part of the traffic study, there is not an accident, count or study. It's purely just trips. That would be actually quite interesting to see. I don't even know if that even exists.
Please look into whatever the alternatives are. We desperately feel we need it to protect our families.
Okay. And I think the city actually, city traffic actually records all the accidents and basically has an understanding of where there are more accidents than other locations. And so that might be something that the city may want to look into further.
So I want to make that we're being very clear, right? If we're looking at different alternatives, it would be an emergency only.
That's fine. If a fire comes through, we all hear about the fires.
Yeah. So you have our commitment. We are definitely looking at it. Okay. Cell tower, I have no idea. Right. I just we don't deal with that. That's not one of the services that we provide. So, all right. Thank you for that question.
Thank you for. Yes, hear me? Jamie Hawk, thank you for everything you presented today. Obviously, there's an updated plan. So my first question is, will this plan and the evacuation route be approved prior to the plan being approved? We know what the evacuation route is.
Okay.
So the actual evacuation route, emergency route, is something that we will have to work with CDOT on. And if anybody knows CDOT, they're notorious for not giving an inch on the block. If anybody's familiar with the Venezia project, North Fork, there was a request to gain access to Powers on an emergency access gated, and they said they rejected that idea. So what I can tell you, honestly, we have a meeting set up with CDOT that's occurring next week, and we are going to talk about the plan for what we are wanting to propose. It does go across, the idea is that it would infringe on the Powers right-of-way. We're hopeful. We would like to think that CDOT would actually approach this from the mindset that lives are endangered. They would help with the situation. And so that's the latest. In terms of timing, we hope to have that, if it's applicable, if it works for CDOT, we'd like to have that in place. And we could even potentially show it on the land use if we can get that secured with them.
Yeah, because one of the things I did with the original plan that came out in June is I went door to door and had 243 signatures of people that opposed that plan. And 2 reasons are: one is evacuation and 2 is traffic. And I want to clear up something that was said. This neighborhood never disapproved of this plan for the parks. Never. The only thing they disapproved of was the traffic. You look at the comments I have right here from that meeting, we never said we don't want to park back there. What we said is we don't want 2,500 additional units a day leaving the neighborhood. The current plan calls for 3,000. The plan is exactly the same we just approved with, and now we're talking about homes and evacuations, so I just wanted to clear that up and say, with this new plan, I plan on going door to door and getting more signatures. If this community disapproves of it again, what will the next steps be?
Yeah.
We have one final question, and I'll try to answer it really quick. I guess we'd go back to the drawing board for the third or fourth time in the Parks Department with that 60-acre property.
My name is Sarah Larson. I live in Bison. You may have touched on my question. I have two questions, mostly for the Parks Department. According to the agreement, as I understand it, that was made November 8th, 2022, you're obligated to apply for rezoning. So you're doing that because you're obligated to do so. Are you obligated to actually sell this land?
Yes, we are. Yeah, and I think everybody has it in their... It's a real estate transaction, just like when you bought your house and you signed on the dotted line, we have that as well. It just has this requirement in it that we, first of all, apply for the rezoning and diligently pursue it, which we are doing through all of these steps. And I would not want to be in breach of a contract. We are in good faith pursuing this. But I guess probably in the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, couldn't it be a park space in the 60 acres? So I do want to respond to that, because I read through all those comments as well. I found them, I went through all of them. And the problem with having a 60-acre park is that you end up having all of the amenities that will bring a large amount of people through that same space. And so we think about Memorial Park, think about John Venezia Park on any given day. They're very active places. They have sports fields. They have all kinds of things going on. They have special events. Head on down to Memorial Park for Labor Day liftoff, and you get a sense of what the larger community parks do. And because of this awkward property, it still would have the same problems.
I think those are problems that are only certain times of day, seasonal problems. When you have people actually living back there, a large population actually living there all the time, I feel like that's a lot bigger fire and traffic risk than traffic only at certain times of day. And I just wonder what the community needs, because I don't know that we need more housing, and I'm wondering if we can do what the community needs, because there's, according to the parks website, 8 community parks in the town. Most of them are in the southern part of town. And in a city of almost 500,000 people, I don't know why we don't have a nice community park in the northern part of town, because the neighborhood park that they're proposing is only 3.5 acres, as I understand the very bare minimum size for a neighborhood park. So I just wonder if we can't do what is maybe needed and provide a park which would be a lot lower risk with fire and traffic.
Thank you for your comments, because that's what we're here for tonight. And here on this map, John Venezia Community Park is kind of that community park that we were proud to open in 2017 here. And so I just want to point that out and then offer this lady the next opportunity to have a question.
Well, speaking of parks,
I'm from Pine Creek, and we have the wildlife preserve, where not only do we have the pebble mouse, we have, and I ran the database for this area last night, and according to the database, there is federal endangered species of the gray wolf in this area. We have the pebble mouse in this area, it's a protected species. We have the golden eagle, the balm eagle, several types of plants, flowers, and then I found out from somebody I spoke to tonight that they have been taking care of an antelope herd that has been displaced by all of this building. Now, the state also has endangered species of the lynx. And we've had lynx and we have bobcats, who are a species of the lynx. What are you going to do with all of these displaced animals if you take up their park? That is their home.
Thank you very much for your question, and I I, like you, appreciate all of these wildlife species. But what is important for wildlife species is being able to connect to the wildlife habitat. And that's what those riparian corridors do for them. That's why we're excited to get the donation of the 352 acres, because it's not just Preble's Meadows jumping mouse in there. It may be protected under federal law for that, and we will uphold those protections, but it serves all of those wildlife habitat properties. This property that we have right now for the sports complex is along Powers Highway. It is not the same level of habitat that we got in return on the donation.
Good evening. Mike Coral. I've been in higher education for over 20 years, and my issue is with the crowding of the schools. You have a hard time finding a high school student in Pine Creek who doesn't think the school is overcrowded. The hallways are overcrowded. There's in, trailers for classrooms outside of many buildings. They're eating lunch in their cars because there's not enough room in the cafeteria. They have to leave campus to go get lunch because the cafeteria can't serve them. I think this, for city planning purposes, I think this goes beyond just this development. We have the Vickery Ridge development, which is also in the Pine Creek School District. We have the Interquest Ridge, I think they call it, which is also in this district. You're adding not just these 300 homes, but all those other homes are being added with no plan for schools. It's very disappointing that you didn't have a comment from the schools in the presentation, which leads me to believe that there's a huge step that needs to happen before we can. So my question for the city planning folks is, why aren't we considering this here at this meeting?
Sorry, y'all, I was in the back taking notes. As it relates to the school district, and Michael, I believe we've corresponded a number of times on this issue. The city is working quite closely with the school district. We are working to have them evaluate this application. It's been sent to them, and they've done an initial review. And we continue to work with the school district to determine what their concerns are as it relates to capacity, if those concerns exist. So from what the district has told us, is they've not talked about capacity at all. And so we are continuing to work with them to get a read on what their concerns are as they see it related to those capacity issues. So know that we've heard the comments that you all are raising about the capacity that exists at District 20 and in this area specifically, and we're actively pursuing conversation with the school district to address that.
So real quick, I'll say the last 10 years, the student population at Pine Creek has grown by 400 students. Okay? The density for student-teacher ratios is 30% above what's the acceptable level. Okay? Now that impacts the most disadvantaged students most. Okay? And that's what we're creating is this separation amongst our students.
Yeah, and I hear that concern, and I don't want to minimize that and the effects that that has on our student population. And I just do want to reiterate that the planning office is working to identify what those issues are raised by the residents and work with the district to find a solution and find their response to that information. So know that I'm actively pursuing that, and when I get an answer, I will be sure to provide that to all of you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan. Thank you. Respectfully dominated 50% of our time allotted to us here, so good job on that. My concern is with Park and Rec. This was supposed to be a park. Maybe the 2016 plan was grandiose. The people in this room, the people in these neighborhoods, we don't want this. What we want is what we were promised was a park. The gentleman said he didn't have, the HOA did not go against the plan as it was originally put out in 2016. Their concern was traffic. Now you're going to put housing in there. So I lay the blame for this issue squarely on you. Because the city and the Parks and Rec department should have built the park, and if it didn't go through the first time, come back to this community and ask us what we can do. Modify your grandiose plan for a sports complex. So my question is, why don't you do that?
And I appreciate that question, so thank you. I've been the Parks Director at this department for almost a year now. And back in 2016, I was the legal advisor to the department. So I do remember that entire process. And one of the things that we do in the Parks Department is we take that public comment very seriously. And the big public comment was really around there's only one way in and there's only one way out. And people really didn't feel comfortable with the sports complex having that issue. The Parks Department listened to it. The number 2 comment that we received is, why don't you put that sports complex in a better place where go do a land exchange, do something else that doesn't belong here. And there were a lot of comments along those lines, and we took them to heart. And we really did work hard to identify a land exchange or another location or something else that would work better for the community. So we took that course of action, and we're here today answering questions and trying to do our best to answer those questions. And I bet you have a question.
Why didn't you modify the plan?
Hi, I'm Annabelle Spencer. I live in Bison Ridge. And to that point that we were just talking about, the new agreement that's executed to begin wildfire evacuation clearance and modeling study, it was HB 23-1075 on August 21st. I'm just curious, I mean, let's think about the Mountain Shadows fire where there was loss of life because there's only one ingress and one egress. We also live very close to Black Forest where that is a big concern for fire safety and evacuation. Can you speak to that, please?
Probably it's the Parks Department. I cannot, but let me see if another person can answer your question for you. I don't see anyone jumping up in the back to do that, but we have logged the question, and we'll definitely follow up.
One follow-up question, but still it's other.
Thank you, because I do want to make sure everybody in this line gets a chance. Thank you.
So just according to the Ovation in the very small print, it says the 3.5 acre park is subject to relocation and changes to the size and or whether we're going to have, because you've already mentioned that we're at capacity for the 30,000 whatever is required for this area. Well, what does that mean for our park when you can sell more houses in that space?
So we obviously we put those disclaimers on there because the plan isn't finished, right? But I'm not going to stand up here and say that we're going to put a 3.5 acre park in and not do okay? So that one of the reasons we exceed our requirements from the city requirements is because we recognize that to be a great amenity for the community, right? One of the things we're looking at in doing the 3.5 acre park is that would benefit Bison Ridge. I don't believe Bison Ridge has a park. We didn't develop Bison Ridge, but this would allow those residents to have the ability to come over there as well. So there's a lot of legalese up there, but there's a lot of people out here that will remember that we committed to 3.5 acre park. We're going to do it. Okay?
Here. Hello. Okay. Hi, my name is Dana Dugan. I'm the founder of West Side Watch, and thank you for your question on the state bill. I was one of the people that worked with Representative Schneider getting that passed on evacuation. I think it was, well, first, Mr. Sevick from Kettle Creek, they went through this before, and to you, in their traffic study, it showed one car per home in a 5-bedroom community. Can you tell me what the assumption is in your study?
We'll turn that over to the consultant. Does it?
Yeah, that's during the peak hour of the adjacent street traffic, so one vehicle per home. For the peak hour, daily is about 10 vehicles per resident.
So are you saying how many cars per house does your study assume, I guess is what I'm asking?
Well, we study from two different perspectives, daily and the peak hour. So the daily is 10 cars per day. During the peak hour, it's one vehicle per resident.
Okay, thank you. And then Mr. Now came up earlier to you about the cell service. And I just wanted to note that Zone Haven, which is a panacea currently that the city is adopted to deal with our fire issue, only works when the cell towers are up. It is an on system, and all of these fires, Bahana, Paradise, the cell towers go down. So that's obviously really critical that they have cell services. And then the last question is probably, maybe the mayor can come up and answer this one. How is it possible that the fire department, on what grounds, on what rubric would they approve this with one road in and out? And then I'll leave and tell you plans and maps, and you can buy them on their site.
Okay, no problem. It's based on, okay.
I'm Becky Wright from Kelly Creek. We were in professionals for the park there when we moved in. My nephew is pretty high up in the fire department here in Colorado. He's been up in Denver yesterday, today, hiring firemen all day. So he couldn't be here. But I ran the plant by him over the weekend, and he actually said he's going to have an office in that new fire station. And he says, it is not safe. One way in, one way out. And if you're going to make it into 3 lanes, how does that work? You know,
It would be a turn lane. It would be striped for a turn lane going down the center.
So you're going to have to take out our
Let me
sidewalks?
just state that. We go to the fire department. Their officials tell us whether it meets the plan. So I can't comment any further. But I did stand up here, and Cody stood up here to tell you, we are looking at alternatives, right? So even though it's not required, it meets the plan, we recognize that if we can do something more, we certainly will. We're going to try it like that.
Why aren't you considering another road in?
There's no other, yeah, we can't talk about it.
You can't take it out of the road issue? Or
No, because there's miles, you can't come to miles. There really is no other alternative. We're looking at an alternative emergency exit.
how much money is the park department making off this property?
Okay.
How much?
That's public record. So the sale price is $6.15 million, about that. So they more than double the price. And so we're paying. We were approached because it was supposed to be a sports complex. They determined not to. Okay. Yes, sir.
I'd like for clarification. Can you hear me? How many single housing units will there be?
Yes.
360? Up to 360.
Up to 360.
And will these be publicly owned?
No.
They're privately owned?
That's correct.
Okay. So there won't be any commitment from our government to make these affordable for people like me who need to move in out of my house into
make a necessity for homes to be affordable in our area?
In this area, we are not targeting affordable homes. I will say, with the plan that we have, we're trying to make them as reasonably priced to determine attainable.
Do you have a price point, Chief?
Not yet. Not yet. We're still in we're just in the design phase.
If you represent us, you should try your best to make it affordable in any way you can.
Okay.
We only have a couple minutes left here, so we'll try and get as many as we can.
Like Laura, I didn't know we keep pressing on this and we touched on it again, but is 4,000 calculated on a road that has 2 exits? 4,000 cars on a road that has 2 exits? And so are we to assume that it's 8,000 because there's only one way in and out?
No, that's calculated on one street. Major collector classification in Colorado Springs has a capacity limit of 10,000 vehicles per day. So it's kind of
one street.
One street.
One street that only has one entrance and exit. So if it's 4,000 for any street that has an exit on both ends, ours does not. So are we to assume now that we're talking about the traffic of 8,000 cars? Does that make sense?
No, it's 10,000 vehicles at any given point. So if there was somehow in the perfect world an access to Interquest, you'd be talking about 2,000 and 2,000, but the capacity at any single point would still be 10,000.
And then widening, I know you're saying you're not sure. The only way to widen is to take away all of the open space right on, thank you, Chapel Ridge under. So we've got a retention pond and all that open space. So are you going to take all of that to widen the street?
So there won't be any street widening. There's already existing pavement width to accommodate a 3-lane section. It's 46 feet wide. You only need 36 feet to be able to have a 3-lane section. So there'll still be 10 feet of excess pavement width to accommodate the 3-lane section. And there was a little confusion earlier with the 3-lane section. So that's 1 lane in each direction with the center. A lot of times it'll be a 2-way left turn lane. The striping in the center is not determined whether it's 2-way left turn lane or if it's striped out designated with left turn lanes.
My name's Jack, and if I just had a question about like if they build more homes near Basin Village and that, when like we already have enough traffic on Old Ranch, so that would just make more. And I don't understand why they would build more townhouses. It would just make more traffic. So.
I think that this is a question for state planning. I'm Brooke Dobbins. I kind of represent Preserve Pine Creek Village. And we got correspondence from a D20 advisor saying that D20 as a whole cannot deny enrollment whatsoever to their schools. They can only ask for land or money. So why is there not something in city planning when talking to D20 that requires them to comment on enrollment?
I answered this a little bit before with Michael's question, but the same logic applies here is that the school district, we've asked them to be our partner in these communications and help us address development impacts as it relates to this. I'm in communication with the chief operating officer at District 20, and we're working on finding solutions to address these concerns. So I don't have an answer for you right now because I don't know what the answer is going to be. But I'm working with the school district to determine what those answers could be, not only as it relates to this application, but applications in the future that would generate a student population. So we're working towards finding those solutions.
I guess my question is, why isn't there a regulation that requires them to comment specifically on enrollment?
The school district determines their level of involvement in deciding development impacts and looking at those things. So there's no mandate from the city planning office they're responsible for doing that evaluation for their own school facility planning purposes. And so they're a partner agency that reviews these applications, and so there is some level of oversight, but it's their responsibility as the district to determine what their capacity and needs are. So that's the best answer I have for you right now. I don't know that I have a satisfactory answer to your question.
Okay, they just told us they couldn't say that, so.
Good job, everybody. Really appreciate everybody's interest. My main concern that has not been covered, kind of touched on, was stop sign. It's ridiculous. Nobody stops. Everybody rolls through. Okay? Nobody stops. The best answer, not for everybody, but the best answer would be at least 2 roundabouts. One at Limestone on Chapel Ridge and one at Looking West. Those are the 2 most likely places where I have to stomp on the brake because somebody is rolling through it. When everybody understands and uses the roundabout properly, it works. The second one, I'll finish up quick, is Powers is obnoxious. There should be some sort of sound barrier on both sides of Powers, not just for our neighborhood, but also for our neighbors to the east. The noise is obnoxious. It is especially bad on Friday, Saturday nights. When the kids are racing, there's little 2-cylinder, big resonator trying to sound like a Mack truck going up and down the road. We have major sound issues that's affecting our lives, wildlife, their own lives, and no police presence. I have not heard the siren from the police chasing these guys. It happens every Friday and Saturday night. Nobody's chasing them. All lives matter. Those people that are doing it need some help. And we need some help from those in position to curb those behaviors.
One last question.
I think this is for the city, but in the purchase sale contract, if it is not rezoned from park to the whatever density you want, does the purchase sale contract go away? Because I don't think they want to buy a park. So with that being out, that though your word is your bond, if you think it is in the best interest for a park or a complex or whatever, will the purchase sale contract die?
So thanks for that question. The answer is that we need to apply for and diligently pursue the rezoning. And then whatever happens in the process happens after that. And you're right, La Plata Communities does not want to buy something as a park. So I hope that answers your question. I guess. Do we have time? We've got one more question. You're going to back cleanup. Sorry.
Thank you all for being here, by the way. So I live in North Fork. We've been at this similar argument for about 3 years. Last July, just past July, we were in front of the city council. The city needs, I hope the mayor is still here, the city needs a code that says no development can be done with only one exit. That is unacceptable. You built North Fork with one exit. No, you had one exit. I'm sorry. The second exit got shut down, and you built anyway. Right? No, there is not. I lived there. I know. And the city council. By the way, if you're familiar with Kettle Creek North, last July, recent July, we were in front of the city council. We argued that one exit is unacceptable. you gotta have 2 legitimate exits. The city council voted 9-0 in our favor. Our appeal was, we have to have a second exit. No additional houses can be built until we get a second exit. And your proposal here is ridiculous. You can't build a development. The county has a law requiring 2 exits, and the city needs a law. I don't know if the mayor's still here or not, but the city needs a law. No development should be done with only 1 exit. You will people at risk. If there's going to be a fire or an emergency exit, and that 1 exit is blocked, they could die. And that will be on you.
Process will go through. You will have your opportunity to voice those concerns. They do look at numbers, right? North Fork has over 700 houses. This is quite a bit, quite a few less. 850. Right? And you bought into that, didn't you? Because it's a nice community. We know what we're doing.
All right, everybody, I want to thank you all for your time tonight. To the city. The city, me as the case planner on this application, you direct questions to me, and then I pass them through to the development team, the Parks Department and the developer who spoke tonight, and they will review those comments and provide generalized written responses to me to those requests. I just want to talk a little bit about the process moving forward so that we're all on the same page about how this will work. A rezoning request has decision-making authority with the city council. That means that as we go through the review of this application, Cody mentioned that they're planning to resubmit in about 2 weeks. Anybody who sent me an email will get a notification from me when that submittal has been made. There's a 2-week review. Yes, that's correct. I'm getting there. So we're still in the internal review stage of the project. It's not ready to go to City Planning Commission or City Council. So what we're doing at this phase is we're still checking to make sure that it's code compliant, and then we refer it to the City Planning Commission first, and then to the City Council. There will be 2 public hearings on the item, one at City Planning Commission and one at City Council, and the final decision-making authority rests with the City Council. So they're the ones who are making decisions on this application, and you all will be notified when those meetings are scheduled. There will be emails sent to everybody, so if you're on my email list, please send comments to me so that I have your emails, or sign in on the sign-in sheets up front. If you haven't done that already, please write your email down so that I will reflect that. And so with that ends the meeting. I'll be here for another few minutes to help sort of straighten out the room, so if you have comments for me specifically, I welcome them, and you all can come speak with me. Thank you so much for your